Hey y'all, welcome to Ask Attica, my weekly podcast produced by State Live Streams. Today we're going to be talking about the cuts to public media, public broadcasting, in particular public radio, but we across the board. So I have a special guest who is joining me today, and we'll be right back with that conversation. Hey y'all, I'm Attica Scott, former Kentucky State Representative. They're asking me about everything, local, state, federal, all the time. How do I do this? How do I do that? Why can't I get a speed hump? What's going on with the consent decree? Hey y'all, welcome to Ask Attica. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Friday morning. Hey y'all, it's Ask Attica with Attica Scott, former state representative, and my guest today is the president and CEO of Louisville Public Media, Kenya Young. Welcome, Kenya.
Thank you so much for having. Thank you for coming over to the studios.
Of course, always happy to do so.
Absolutely.
So I love to start with a question for my guests, and that question is, what is bringing you joy today?
What is bringing me joy today? You would think it would be a hard answer on a day like today,
Mm-mm.
and we will go into that. But I will tell you actually, what brings me joy today is what brought me into this profession to begin with, which I am seeing the power of the passion, the mission of journalism. My staff's rallying together right now. We are in emergency drive because of the federal funding cut that were cut overnight that I think we'll talk about
Yes,
in a second. But I am renewed this morning. I am choosing one, not to let them steal my joy,
that's right.
but also I got into this profession for a reason. I have reported in several different states and countries and covered elections and covered oaks and embassies and just all the things and stories that were heartbreaking. Uh, Freddie Gray in Baltimore and the protests
Mhm.
there, but beautiful stories, campaign stories, and um, just human interest stories across the country. And that's why I got into this. That's why we do this here. And there is a renewed sense of spirit
Mm.
in this station today for what we do. And I'm feeling it in the community as well. So it is bringing me joy today.
I love that. Well, thank you for hosting us in your space. So
Absolutely.
glad to be here.
Absolutely. You're seeing
Uh,
all the hustle and bustle.
yes,
You're seeing how it's really made. We talk a lot
absolutely.
about how the sausage is made. You're really seeing it right now as we come to the mics today to ask for some money.
Exactly. Yes. So speaking of how the sausage is made, I, you made me think about something. We've got folks who are tuning in from all across the country and in some other countries. In fact, I
Yes.
have a cousin who lives in Germany who I know
Yeah.
often watches. So
Hello.
what is Louisville Public Media? What does Louisville Public Media do?
Absolutely. So we are a public media, I'd like to say community station. I previously worked at NPR for 16 years. So I was in headquarters in Washington, D.C., working at the mothership, as we call it. And then I went to WNYC, New York Public Radio, and then I came here about 2 months ago.
Okay.
So I have public media just running through my veins.
Mm-hmm.
It's my metabolism, I say. And it's actually a little different here than a lot of stations in that we have three public media stations. So we have the news talk station
Hmm.
with some of our own programming and a lot of other public media programming, including NPR.
Okay.
That's WFPL. And
89.3.
correct.
Okay.
And then we have two music stations, one what we call AAA station. What is that? Adult
Okay.
album alternative, one or the other. I should study that now that I'm here. But WFPK
Mhm.
is our music station. And then WUOL is our classical station.
Okay.
So we're music, we're arts, we're education, as you would think public media would be,
Hmm.
right? So we are news, we are talk, we are interviews across all stations. But we have those three stations that make up this Louisville public media, delivering across both Louisville, Southern Indiana.
Mm.
We spread out. I think some can reach us as far as Lexington.
Okay.
So we have a wide range there, really feeling like we are serving a variety and multitude of
Mhm.
audiences.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. So I want to get right into it.
Yep.
Okay. So Um, how will the cuts to public broadcasting, in particular public radio, impact WFPL in particular?
Yes. So, and I think it's important to really clarify because part of how we got here is that people don't understand how this works,
Mhm.
right? So, there is federal funding that goes to CPB, corporate broadcast,
Mhm.
uh, Corporation for Public
Yes.
Broadcasting, been in place for
Hmm.
over 5 decades.
Yes.
Um,
The people who
and
bring us Sesame Street.
that's exactly
Yes.
right. So this is MP. That's why you often see your NPR, PBS, Elmo, Sesame Street,
Yes.
Big Bird. They've been talking about, and that is always up until now had bipartisan support
Hmm.
for a reason because it's needed, and because what happens is that is distributed in the areas to places like WFPL, the news station that carries it. Some places are like Louisville, where we are a little bit of a city center and people are able to come to us and have other choices. Many other choice in the area.
Hmm.
They are the station for news of record for their community, sometimes for music. I think it's also important to know that there are stations across the country that are only music stations. So
Hmm.
there are some WFPKs and WULs, my music stations have,
Hmm.
and that's all they have, and they've been targeted and cut without it be around this debate about the news that is
Yes.
out there. So there's just I think a clarification to be made about where the money is going and
Hmm.
also what happened overnight.
Hmm.
CPB, that we usually get funding 2 years early, so the rescission is really when we say a clawback and rescinding of money, this
Hmm.
is money that was approved
Yes.
2 years ago for FY26, FY27.
Hmm.
We are currently in FY26 that it is. This is a budget we are working on right now
Yes.
that we just had 5% taken out of overnight.
Mm-hmm.
We usually, before this was happening, we thought the threat was to future money.
Hmm.
I was on the Hill before I even got here talking to our congressmen and our senators about the next budget, appropriations, FY28 and 29, because that's the process and that's how this has worked for years.
Hmm.
We never thought we'd be in this fight fighting for the money that had already been sent by the government
Hmm.
to CPB, sitting in the treasury waiting to be dispensed to us.
Hmm.
So that's what just happened.
Hmm.
And for Louisville Public Media, that is 5% of our budget. That is across all the stations. WFPL, of course, being what's most resourced
Hmm.
because we have the reporters, we have the shows. I'm going to be honest, we already had cuts before I got here. It has been a hard year for public media.
Hmm.
It's been a hard year for media in general.
Right.
Sponsorship is down. Audience is, I'm not going to say audience is down, audience is complicated.
Yes.
We have to figure out digital strategy. We
Hmm.
haven't lost audience, but audience is finding news right
Yes.
here.
Yes.
And that's not traditionally how we do it.
Hmm.
And so the media landscape is the phrase that we are using all the time now, but the media landscape has changed and it created financial headwinds. When I was at WNYC, in the 3 years I've been there, I had to do 3 rounds of cuts.
Hmm.
So Louisville was not immune to what was happening.
Hmm.
It is not that anything was happening here in particular. That was just the landscape before this even happened. So we were already, quite honestly, cash strapped, resource strapped. We lost quite a few reporters. Even today, as we're going to air, I've had to shuffle a bit because we just don't have as many on air hosts as
Yes.
we used to. And it's like, well, we need to bring so and so from here on Saturdays to come to do all things considered because we
Hmm.
can't leave any hour untapped today. Um, and so it is for us. I'm just going to put the number out there. So
Okay.
we only get 5% of our budget is federal funding. That's
Okay.
another thing people need to know. I think people think we are fully funded by the federal government, that
Hmm.
NPR is fully funded by the federal government.
Hmm.
Nothing could be further from the truth. There are stations that are the most vulnerable, which we consider 30% and up.
Hmm.
Those are the rural stations. Those are stations, some are as high as 60, 70,
Hmm.
80%. But that's actually how this was built. That's what they were supposed to be. And
Okay.
stations like Alaska that don't have the kind of constituency like we do in Louisville,
Hmm.
they absolutely do depend on that. But for us, 5% is still a big deal. $376,000
Yeah.
is a big deal.
Yes.
And that is something, again, that we were already counting on for this budget that we have to remove from the current budget.
Mhm.
My vow for this year at least is that it is not going to come in personnel cuts. We've already been hit too hard.
Mhm.
So what else do we need to do in order to make that up? Very clear that that is our single largest grant. $376,000
Mhm.
is not something that we get in a lump sum from a donor. It's not something that we get in a lump sum for any other institution or foundation. That's our single largest grant that we are having to make up. And so for us, went to the staff and I said, let's quantify what that means to listeners.
Yes.
What does that How does that show up for us?
Mhm.
Well, for us, that's an entire season of Waterfront Wednesday, which we put
Mm.
on the
Yes.
last Wednesday of every month here. That's what six will cost us.
Mhm.
Um, that's what the afternoon programming on
Mhm.
WFPL would cost us.
Yes.
That's what all of WUOL would cost us. Our podcast has already shrunk as it is,
Mhm.
and we do seasonal and we have on track. That would be our entire podcast department.
Okay.
So it is significant for our operations. We are lean.
Mhm.
There is not a lot of fat here. We run on a string, and I like to say that we probably show up bigger than what we actually are, which is good. We
Yes.
want to, but we want to be here doing the work that we came here to do, to be in the communities. We have the investigation team that holds institutions and systems
Mhm.
accountable. Um, all of that is what's in play. And while I do not want to say that we're looking at cutting any of that, the
Mhm.
reality is our operations changed overnight.
Mhm.
And so we are fundraising today. We went into emergency pledge
Yes.
drive,
Yes.
and we are trying to see how we can do this
Yes.
without that money.
Well, let's talk about that. So it's been, I believe, about 60 years, if not longer, that public broadcasting has been receiving federal
That's
dollars.
right.
That's a long time. And so, absolutely, you're expecting that that will continue because you're providing a service that is continuing. So, let's talk about the hustle and bustle
That's
that's
right.
happening this
That's
morning.
right.
So, what are y'all doing to try to fill that gap?
So we knew that this was likely, got closer and closer as we watched the Senate vote 2 nights ago, the vote last night, and had to have a plan. I did not want to be scrambling and caught off guard.
Mhm.
And so we knew that all of the efforts up until now for us have been um, lobbying and advocating for ourselves with our senators, with the
Mhm.
representatives. The power was in their hands, truly, in their vote. And so we thought the best thing that we could do is go to our representatives and say, please understand what you are about to do. Please
Mhm.
understand the vote. There was one, I forget who, I've been in touch with so many
Yes.
representatives. It was not one of ours, but I remember hearing, I think, on the Senate floor when it was up saying, I think, paraphrasing, we might come to regret this vote. And we need to think about how we'll be able to fix, we might have to come back and fix it.
Mhm.
There's not a lot that can be fixed if you have to take almost $400,000 out
Mhm.
of your budget in 1 year's time.
Mhm.
Um, we are going to have to probably stop traveling and doing our reporting trips that we like to do.
Mhm.
We're going to have to pull back on community events that we like
Mhm.
to do.
Mhm.
Again, we cannot afford to lose any more reporters. That really, I want to preserve the journalism. I want to preserve our on air hosts on our music
Mhm.
stations. Those are already at the bare minimum. But we are going to have to stop doing some things.
Yes.
There are some stations that will have to stop doing news programs
Mhm.
altogether in the other parts of Kentucky.
Mhm.
It's public. I had a phrase: public media will change as we know it. And
Yes.
some people kept saying I was being a little too dramatic, but public media is still going to be here. But
Mhm.
as we know it, the 60 years that we were just talking
Mhm.
about, the way it's been funded, the model we've used, and make no mistake, we have not, Louisville Public Media, NPR, many of the other stations, we have not solely relied, as I mentioned, 5%.
Mhm.
That means 95% comes from donors, comes from members, what we call sustainers, who are
Mhm.
giving us 5, 10, 15, $50 a month, donors who are writing checks to us. endowments, foundations,
Mhm.
underwriters and sponsors, business sponsors in the business.
Mhm.
That's where a lot of it is coming from. And so we have been dependent on the community for a lot of this time. We
Yes,
are now going to have to be dependent on the community for this last 5%.
that's right.
But I know that it's a big ask, and that's what we're here doing today. We came to the microphones at 6 a.m.
Mhm.
and said, "This just happened 6 hours ago, and
Mhm.
we need you now more than ever before."
That's right.
One of the numbers that I had the team come up with, I said, "How much will it cost each? What does this gap mean for us?"
Mhm.
And so we calculated with our members, if every sustaining member just gave $4 more,
Mm.
it would fill that gap.
Mm.
Or if every sustaining member asks someone else to join and be a member.
Yes.
We notice that we only have one in every six listeners is an actual sustainer or
Mm.
member.
Mhm.
Let's make that one in five. Let's make that one in four.
Mhm.
Um, and so there's an opportunity here to bridge that gap. We know that it is an ask,
Mhm.
but this is an investment into the journalism we do, the music, the discovery that we
Mhm.
bring, the emerging artists and local artists, and the community events that we know make us a fabric of Louisville.
That's right. That's right. Well, we're going to take a break. And before we go to that break, folks, I want to talk about being a member. So, and the events, they connect. So, I had never been a member of Louisville Public Media, knowing that they do amazing work, have always been very fair and showing up in community. I mean, we're out there with us every day during the protests in 2020, seeking justice for Breonna Taylor. When I was in the state legislature, we're there covering state issues with the local perspective. How does that impact Louisville? And I appreciate that. But I never became a member because, in all honesty, I'm like, I don't know what that means. Why would I be a member? And then last year, they came to Black Coffee. They were going around the city doing different community events, and we're at Black Coffee. And I was there meeting with someone, went over to the table, said hey to folks. I knew a couple of folks there. And then they started talking to me about becoming a member. So I want y'all to know that when public media is showing up in your community, it's an opportunity for you to ask questions, get to know about the work and the services that they provide, the work they do and the services they provide, and then ask them what does it mean to be a member, and then make that decision to join and support. Because the only way these services will continue, well, not the only way, but one of the ways they will continue is if we actually support what we want to see present. So we're going to take a break and we're going to come back with Kenya Young, President and CEO of Louisville Public Media.
Through every note, every performance, the arts connect us. The arts connect us through joy and through awe, bridging cultures and generations. From intimate theaters to the grandest stages, the arts bring us together, reminding us that we're never truly alone. When we experience the arts, we experience each other. Kentucky Performing Arts. The arts connect us.
I know you're watching the live stream right now, but I want to take a moment to tell you to check out this new book right here over my shoulder. Believe me, it'll be worth it.
All right, welcome back, y'all. I know a lot of y'all are joining us during your lunch break, so we appreciate that. We are here with Kenya Young, the president and CEO of Louisville Public Media. So I wanted to get back to the ways in which public media shows up in Provide. I think it will help people to get a better understanding of why their membership and their donations
That's
are
right.
so important to public media.
Yes. And you said something that just made me remember how important Louisville Public Media when I was back in Washington, D.C., and I was at NPR and I was running Morning Edition.
Mhm.
Obviously, it was COVID, and then Breonna Taylor
Mhm.
happened. And we run the morning show. We run Up First, the
Mhm.
podcast that's
Mhm.
adjacent to it. And this is the power of this network and Louisville Public Media being there. I immediately said, we need to get someone in Louisville in Up First,
Mhm.
largest news podcast. And had there not been a reporter here, or had Louisville Public Media not been here,
Mhm.
we would have gotten it anyway. I was going to
Yeah.
get it in anyway. I was not going to let that story not be in my national programming. But that is the power of having someone available and on the ground in
Mhm.
Louisville Public Media, in the community, understanding the community, because I was able to bring someone in overnight to Up First as the top story to make sure we got the Breonna Taylor news on the minute that we knew it happened, because of course, there was enough delay
Yes.
in it being known. But once we knew, I wanted to make sure we all knew.
That's right.
And so, that's just a little bit to explain how the network works and how Louisville Public Media supports and brings even our local stories to the national space and to NPR for the whole country globally, actually, to be able to hear what's happening here when we have news happening here.
That's right.
I also, I'm very new. I just got here May 19th.
Oh, wow.
I'm brand spanking new to
Okay.
Louisville.
Well,
And so
welcome.
I've been thrown into it. And so, a lot of what I'm thinking about though, I really force myself to go out. In fact, one of my recruiting trips here, I was doing a little research. I said, what's this black coffee? You mentioned black
Yes.
coffee. It was one of the first, I think I went from the airport to black coffee, as I was waiting to come over here for my interview. And so, but I'm really just about throwing myself into the community. Louisville is not like any place I've ever lived. And I tell my friends back at home in DC and LA, I can't really describe it to you, but what's Louisville like? I can't even begin to describe it to you. But I'm loving about it because I'm experiencing, seeing things that I never expected to. My new joke and running line is that I'm going to get a T-shirt made with DC, New York, ... Louisville.
Yes.
And I was like, that's going to be a conversation starter no matter what elevator I go into. But what a lot while I've been thrown into this federal funding fight from the minute I've got here, and that's what I've been concentrating on, I'm so excited to really get to know Louisville and all aspects of Louisville. And the truth be told, Louisville Public Media has some work to do with our audience and with reaching out to all corners of the community. And the way I have led, the stories I've done, the shows that I've launched over the years, I know that as much as we are in East Louisville and as much as we are tackling institutions like Jefferson Public Schools and what's going on downtown, there's so many stories in South End you're not covering, so many stories in the West End that we are not covering. And there is an untapped audience that I know exists. And what I know, I've done a lot of research in these spaces. It has been, DEI has been weaponized in such a way, just the label of it. And in some ways, I like to say, fine. If it forces us to define what we mean by it, then sure, because we actually got too comfortable with these initials that people are misinterpreting and redefining what it means. So I'm happy to redefine what we first meant by it when we said that we want, for me, in the public media space, I want to diversify the voices there, diversify the staff that I have at the table, and I want to diversify the leaders who are making the decisions. Because for me, it's about representation. I had to start challenging while I was a champion of this and stomping up and down hallways about this. It became so cliche that I myself was questioning if people knew what they meant and if we knew what we were talking about strategically. And I would ask, my new CEO, the new leader from Minnesota, what have you. And the first thing you say, well, we've got to capture young and diverse voices. What do you know what you mean by that? I know what I mean by that, but do you know what you mean by that? I say that, and how that shows up for me is truly about the voices that we are having and representing. It's about representation. What voices are we getting in that are not normally a part of this story? What news stories are we doing that are not normally a part of this conversation? What communities are we going into? Same news story. It's not a different news story.
That's right.
It's the same news story with a different perspective.
That's right.
Because there are lived experiences that are going to live out a news story differently in the West End, in the South End, and the East End. And I think that is very important. One of the things I know I want to bring to Louisville Public Media and make sure that we are prioritizing, because we do need those younger and more diverse audiences. Those are that's the up and coming consumer of news. And our audience is traditionally older, educated, white, always has been. And that needs to change. Because we want to represent, it's just, It's the right thing to do.
Yes.
Again, when people questioned or redefined DEI, the whole reason we stepped into this space in media to fight for that is because that was the right thing to do
Mhm.
for our community.
Yes.
And there was an overrepresentation and a one side. When they
Mhm.
want to talk about bias on one side, there was a one perspective of news with a whole swath of communities being left out of that
Yes.
news story,
That's right.
and that's really important, and that's what I want to bring to Louisville
Mhm.
public media. But some of the when we talk about being in the community, that's what that means to me.
That's right.
Whose voices are we hearing? Whose stories are we telling?
Mhm.
What is not being presented? Whether we did the story or not, we're going to go do the story again. We're just going to be on a different street corner when we
Right.
do it the next time.
Yes. No, I'm so glad we're having this conversation. My son is a human resources director in Columbus, Ohio. Today is his birthday. Happy birthday,
Happy
Kit.
birthday!
And he talks about that often, being in human resources and seeing DEI become DEIBWXYZ. And he said at some point, exactly what you said, we lost the meaning of what it meant to be intentionally inclusive,
That's exactly right.
intentionally focusing equity. Mean, do you
That's
even know
exactly right.
anymore? You just know there's an E and you don't
That's
even know what it
exactly right.
stands for. So I'm glad we're having that
And
combo.
especially in news, because there
Yes.
is news is really a telling of an
Hmm.
experience, right? And so a perfect example, way back when there was a show on NPR called Tell Me More with
Yes.
Michelle Martin,
Hmm.
and a dear friend of mine. Hi, Michelle. And and I was working on Morning Edition at the time, and there was a news story. This is probably I in 2014, 15, maybe even earlier, but the People's Opera of New York or something like that was closing, and Morning Edition with Steve Inskeep did that story, and great story. I hadn't even known of it. I didn't know. I had never lived in New York before then, and all that kind of stuff. And it was a great story. And Tell Me More did the exact same story.
Hmm.
And in some ways, I thought, well, didn't they hear Morning Edition this morning? We
Right.
already did this story, but not with Michelle doing it. And Michelle
Mm.
booked in Morning Edition, we had the artistic director of the People's Opera. Well, she had the choreographer, and
Hmm.
she had it was a person of color, and it was an entirely different
Yes.
conversation on the same exact story, and I got something out of both of them.
Hmm.
And that is our job, and that's the important part. So when I know you're going to go into it, but when I hear about the bias,
Yes.
um, our job is to get a variety of
That's right.
perspectives and lived
Mm-hmm.
experiences. And people are experiencing life right now in America a
Mm-hmm.
certain way,
Mm.
and it is our job to put that on the air.
Yes. And we're going to come back to that conversation around the biases. I will say I'm loving all these connections. So my daughter lives in DC now. So
Yay!
we'll have to talk after this.
Yes, we are just moving from there. Moved,
Okay.
been there 18 years, so we that has become home.
Yes, and I'm glad that you're here on this particular podcast because Stay Live Streams reaches so much of the audience you talk about
Yes,
Louisville Public Media is missing. So
yes.
we have folks who are watching who are deeply
Thank
rooted in the
you.
South End and the West
Thank
End, right?
you.
And so
Yes,
they're getting a different perspective about
that's
Louisville
exactly
Public
right.
Media that maybe they didn't
That's
have
exactly
before.
right. Do
So
you
this is
know what
good.
has bothered me the
Okay.
most in the research I've done? Instead of kind of pounding stomping my boots about this, I finally, we do research, and I would just dig a little deeper with the research,
Mhm.
and it was just like, oh, our black and brown audiences, our black and brown audience, it's just not where we want them to be. And I said, let's dig a little deeper about that,
Mhm.
and what we would find is that two things that disturb. So yes, because when you stop there, what you get is we need more black and brown audience.
Mhm.
You don't get the context of why we need more or why we don't have them.
Yes.
And when I dug deeper, there were two things that really disturbed me
Mhm.
as a black woman
Mhm.
in public media, and that is one, they either didn't even know NPR existed.
Yes.
Louisville, there are people in the West End and South End that don't even know there's an LPM,
Mhm.
Louisville Public Media, right here. A lot of people don't know that Waterfront Wednesday is attached to
Yes.
Louisville Public Media. 10,000 people go out and they don't even know that we exist.
Right.
So they're not even aware of us.
Mhm.
But the part that disturbed me the most is the people who knew of us but did not think we were for them.
Oh.
And that hurts almost,
Yes.
right? Because it's like, We are doing these stories, and I go out of my way to really diversify the content to make
Mhm.
sure we are getting those voices. But there is this perception for Black and brown audiences, particularly, that that's not for us.
Mm,
And we've got to change that,
that's right.
because not only, but it's a two-way street. Not only do I want those audiences to know that we are for them and we are doing the stories for, about, and by them,
Mhm.
but we need to do that. We need to do that
Yes.
more, and we need to show up. We need to make sure that the stories, and I'm gonna be real. A lot of times I was on one of the committees there, for the diversification, the DEI committees, and I would do source tracking and
Mhm.
see, and what we would see is when there was an increase in our Black voices
Mhm.
on on NPR shows,
Mhm.
it was when there was a policing issue
Mhm.
or a race issue. And that's when we have those voices, and there would be a tick.
Yes.
When there was an increase in our Latinx voices, it was an immigration issue.
Mhm.
Can we agree that there are Black experts in an economy story
Right.
as well?
Yes.
Can we agree that there is a smart Latino professor out there to talk about the climate?
Mhm.
Right? Like, and that's what I really had to get the point across, is that these voices can be across any expertise, any field. We, j- we just have to put them on.
That's right. Exactly. I appreciate that. Well, we're going to take a break
Yep.
and we'll be back in just a moment with Kenya Young, President and CEO of Louisville Public Media.
Hey guys, before we get back to the live stream, I'm Tracy, the bartender at Southern Hospitality Bar and Grill, located at 3402 West Broadway. You guys got to come and check us out. You can call your order in, and the phone number is 822-1474. Again, I'm Tracy, the bartender at Southern Hospitality. Come check us out, guys.
All right, welcome back, y'all. Again, we're here with Kenya Young, the president and CEO of Louisville Public Media. So, Kenya, I want to get into the political
Yeah.
conversation because this is a political decision.
Mm-hmm.
So, my first question, just real direct,
Mm-hmm.
is public radio partisan?
It is not.
Okay.
And I will ride that into the ground as someone who's worked at NPR and then other stations following that. And I say that not just because it's a personal opinion of mine. We have done research over and over and over again. This is not a new claim. This has been out here for years. And over again, the research shows, Pointer Research, Pew Research, all the media research shows, NPR pretty much comes down the middle. That graph that they have, and they've got the left and the right, NPR is floating over here somewhere, right in the middle. So that is a perception. That is an opinion. It is not at all the way that those on the inside, we do not go into stories with a premise. We do not go into stories wanting to prove a certain thing. I can say, as someone who worked for there for 16 years, it is about the facts, it is about the accuracy, it is about what the audience needs to know about the story right now. And we go after all of the perspectives and all of the voices.
Mhm.
And I do think sometimes what happens, I think people forget that it is a collective body of work.
Mm.
So you hear one interview, maybe with a Democratic politician,
Mhm.
maybe with an activist,
Mhm.
maybe with some, and you think that's NPR, that's what they always do.
Yeah.
And you did not hear the Republican on in the morning.
Mm.
You did not hear someone opposing that activist the day
Mhm.
before. And so we just forget that it's a collective body, and we hone in I'm going to say we, whoever,
Mhm.
because it's I'm not going to point fingers at the administration or a
Mhm.
certain side. It just there's a collective we that looks at one story and forms an opinion about that story without looking at the collective body of work across all of the shows, all of the guests that are coming, all of
Mhm.
the podcasts. And so it's really unfortunate that that buzz is what this has gotten caught up in.
Yes.
Because you're right, it was a political vote for something that is not political.
That's right.
I'm talking about emergency.
Mm.
We are, you heard with the senator from Alaska, that morning she got
Mm-hmm.
the emergency
Yes.
alert about the possible earthquake from
Yes.
her public media station.
Yes.
Here in Kentucky, the stations in eastern Kentucky and southern
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky, that was the method of alerting during the tornadoes, during the flooding. So this and whether it's the news or actual alert,
Mm-hmm.
right? And backup generators and the
Mm.
transmission and the transmitters. This is an infrastructure and a public safety issue
Yes.
that I think people are forgetting. There's also this argument that oh, the lands you can get internet anywhere now, you can get your news anywhere now.
Mm-hmm.
That presumes
Mm-hmm.
and makes an assumption, which tells me where someone is sitting who makes that assumption that they don't understand access and inequities.
Yes.
There are still places in this country where broadband is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
There is still an access issue to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's an economic one or a geographic one, it is not true that everyone has access to the internet.
That's right.
And so this becomes an accessibility issue.
Mm-hmm.
This becomes an infrastructure, a public safety
Mm-hmm.
issue, an infrastructure issue that's caught up in this political issue about
Yes.
bias. But you can go to media research institutions right now, Pew, Pointer, others that are out there, um, that show the research has been done. This
Mm-hmm.
is not an opinion. NPR falls in the middle. And yes, as an insider, I can say that we strived every day at the table to get all the voices. Now, I will say, who said yes, we have no control over,
Mm-hmm.
right? So who
Right.
said yes to an interview? If that leans a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
there's some questions I would like to pose and lobby back about, why is it that certain people are
Mm-hmm.
saying and giving us access and others are not?
Yes.
We can only put on those who actually answer the call or are willing to come on to talk to us.
That's right. Exactly. And you talked about people getting their news from other sources, like online news sources, social media. To me, the assumption I hear from people who say that is that they don't know, or they assume that you're not on those platforms as well. I absolutely see public media on
That's
Instagram,
right.
right? So it's not as if public media isn't on there. I absolutely see public
That's
media
right.
on Facebook, so it's not as
That's
if public
exactly
media
right.
isn't on there. So you're also working to make the shift to meet audiences where they are.
Absolutely. We have to. I
Yes.
mean, I talk about the digital strategy and digital transformation all the time, because if we do not figure that out, if we are not where they are, I think we've actually um, did ourselves a disservice. I mean, for a while there, NPR was it, right?
Hmm.
Like there were years where we were the news of record, and that landscape has changed tremendously.
Hmm.
And so it used to be a build it and they will come kind of
Hmm.
model. And because we did such excellent reporting,
Hmm.
and that kind of reporting that you couldn't get on the news bites and the quick,
Hmm.
give us 22 minutes, we'll give you the world. No, you
Yeah.
give us an hour and we'll give you just a little slice of the world. We go for a long time sometimes.
Yeah.
That's what they call those driveway moments, but you couldn't get that anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And so the audience came to us for that specifically.
Hmm.
The landscape has changed. Podcast has changed that a lot.
Yes.
Social media has changed that a lot. Just the platform of where you are able to get it, the distribution channels has changed that quite a bit. And so we have to, I have said, instead of trying to become someone's habit, we have to go fit in the habits they already have.
Hmm.
And so we're doing that. And so we are trying to be everywhere as well. But again, this is in the space of of creating a more informed public.
Yes.
We also know that there's a lot of trash out there calling themselves news.
Hmm.
And my kids and themselves, I have 21 and 19-year-old and a 9-year-old. And they will come to me, Mom, did you know such a, where'd you hear that?
Right.
Well, on TikTok, now you know better than to come to me with what you heard on TikTok. Go find me a first source
Hmm.
and a reliable news organization that does that same story,
Hmm.
and then we can have a conversation. So we have to be in these spaces to be able to deliver this unbiased.
Hmm.
because there are so many areas posing as news, and
Yes.
those are the biased ones, to be quite honest.
Hmm.
We have, uh, you know, got put ourselves in a corner where all we are seeing in our feeds is what we want to see.
Right.
And that is not what we do at Louisville Public Media. And that's not, I would venture to say that's not what NPR does. We actually are trying to fight that tide to make
Hmm.
sure that you get out of your feed and you get out of your corner and that you are seeing something different. And that goes both ways. When I was
Hmm.
working at NPR in Morning Edition, there would be some people I put on air that people got, I can't believe that as a
Right.
black woman, you would put, it exists.
Yes.
Here, we're
Hmm.
seeing it in the streets. I'm not giving it a platform. I am letting people, I'm informing people that this is real and
Hmm.
that these are voices, whether we like to hear them or not.
Yes.
And which is why a lot of what is happening is happening.
Hmm.
We have to, shed light on other opinions than our own.
Absolutely. Well, I listen, I know y'all have a lot going on this morning. You're trying to raise some money, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I do want to ask you, what can Ask Attica viewers do to support Louisville Public Media right now?
Yes. I'm just grateful to you, Attica, for being here. Thank
Mhm.
you for coming to the station. Thank you for putting me in front of your audience.
Sure.
Like I said, I've only been here 2 months,
Mhm.
and this is the audience that I want to be in front of, and I want to be more in community. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from your listeners.
Mhm.
I want people to, like you said, ask questions. Reach out to me, call me, come to the station. If you are wondering what is LPM all about, if you were one of those I was talking about, oh, I know about Louisville Public Media, but
Mhm.
NPR is not for me. LBW,
Mhm.
FPL is not for me. Let's have a conversation. That's
Okay.
a coffee at Black Coffee for
Yes.
me, so that we can talk about it.
Absolutely right. So the show is called Ask Attica. So actually, since you've only been here 2 months, do you have any questions you want to ask me? I'm a Louisvillian. So, born and raised here for the
Ask
most part.
Attica. Let's
Yeah.
see. What do I want to
This is when I get
know?
nervous, y'all.
Yeah, we're flipping the script. We're
Yes.
flipping the script. I would love to know, actually, what Louisville Public Media could do to show up in the unusual suspect places where they probably traditionally are not.
Oh, that's an amazing question. I really appreciate that. One is I really think y'all need to continue doing what you were doing last year when I became a member of Louisville Public Media, which is show up and show up further in the West End.
Yes.
Like Black Coffee now has a new location at the
Yes.
Goodwill Opportunity
Yep. I
Center at
saw
28th
that
and
when I was
Broadway,
over
right?
there.
Yeah. So
Yes.
go further west
I've heard
to
there's a farmer's market. I want to
Yes,
go to the farmer's
yes,
market.
exactly. So show up there. Make sure people know what Louisville Public Media is, what Louisville Public Media does.
Yes.
Sometimes you show up to listen, right?
Yes.
Sit and listen and
That's right.
learn, right? You're not necessarily going to do a thing or to cover a
That's
story, but you're
exactly
going
right.
to learn. You've got, of course, my baby, the Parkland Library is now
Yes.
open, so there's
Yes.
an opportunity to go there and talk to folks who are using the library services in the Parkland neighborhood and surrounding areas. So I'd love to see Louisville Public Media continue to do those kinds of show up where people are, show up
Absolutely.
where young folks are. What are
Yes.
young folks doing this summer in the west end of Louisville or
Mhm.
in the south end of Louisville? Like
Mhm.
show up. I went walking with a friend one Saturday morning at Iroquois Park, and oh my goodness, there's everything
Yes.
happening, and you've got folks, immigrants and refugees
That's
all
right.
over the
That's
place,
right.
right? So continuing to show
Absolutely.
up where people
And I'd
are.
love to be invited to those spaces.
Yes,
If you're watching and you're wondering, you just want the new sister who's running LPM
yes.
to come to over, I will come over. I will be in your
Mhm.
spaces, but please invite me to listen, to be a part of, to come enjoy what you're doing. I absolutely will accept the invitation.
Okay, y'all heard this here. Make a note of it. Kenya Young,
Yes,
President and CEO of Louisville Public
I will
Media,
come.
said, "Invite me and I will be
That's
there." So
exactly
make sure
right.
you do that. If you need to know how to, Louisville Public Media is everywhere, so don't act like you don't know how to reach her. But if you don't feel like you don't know how to reach her, you can always ask me how to get in touch, and I will absolutely make that happen. All right. So before we close out, are there any questions that I may have forgotten to ask, left out, or anything you want to be sure to share?
I think you have done it.
Okay.
We're just, I would be remiss if I didn't do the final pitch. We
Yes.
are asking for those dollars today. We're trying to, it sounds like it's going really well. There may be a space in which we are able to fill this gap in one day, which would be extraordinary. But lpm.org. There's a donate button there. We are asking for support so that we can continue to do what we're doing, and I can do more and be able to represent more, just as I want to do.
Awesome. Kenya, thank you so much for being on our show this
Thank
morning.
you for having
I
me.
really appreciate you. And folks, this is Louisville Public Media. It's the public that you really need to hold on and think about. Do you want to lose the public? No, you don't. So be sure to support Louisville Public Media. Thanks for tuning in. As always, thanks to Stay Live Streams for producing and to Louisville Public Media for hosting us in their space. See y'all next time. Hey y'all, I'm Attica Scott, former Kentucky State Representative. They're asking me about everything, local, state, federal, all the time. How do I do this? How do I do that? Why can't I get a speed hump? What's going on with the consent decree? Hey y'all, welcome to Ask Attica. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Friday morning.
Si no haces nada más,
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 Mantente vivo.